This is draft season brought to you by Moody's, a proud sponsor of the New York Football Giants. I am John Schmelk, joined as always by Tony Pauline, our resident draft expert. Tony, happy Thanksgiving, my friend. How are you?
I'm okay, John. Happy Thanksgiving to you and all of our viewers. It's a great time of year. Thanksgiving's a great holiday. 4-day weekend is nice. A lot of football, a lot to eat. The Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. It's going to be fun.
Yeah, I got into a debate with Mark Malusis, who I do the Saturday morning Big Blue Kickoff live show with, and I said I think Thanksgiving is the best holiday, and he was aghast that I thought it was a better holiday than Christmas. And my argument was that A, it's a very American holiday for one. Number two, you also have there's the whole like being thankful for what you have thing. I think it's kind of like a really good message, to be totally honest with you, especially in this day and age. So I vote. I love Christmas, by the way. I have nothing against Christmas. I vote Thanksgiving over Christmas. I got to be honest with you, Tony.
No, I go with Malusis. I love Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving's like the kickoff, and Christmas, in more ways, the one is like bowl season. Yeah, I mean, since I was a kid, I'm a big Christmas guy, but I enjoyed the whole time from literally the days before Thanksgiving through Christmas and New Year's. I just enjoy it all.
Yeah, and by the way, I drive people nuts because the day after Thanksgiving, I already have all my favorites set up on my Sirius and on my web streams. I basically have Christmas music going in my office for like most of the next month. So I drive the people around me nuts. But yes, I am all about it. I'm happy to kick off the season. All right,
We better take DNA tests, John. We may be brothers from a different mother or something like that.
you can't beat it, baby. All right, here we go. Busy show today, folks. We're gonna do a little bit of a recap of the week in college football. We'll look ahead as always at the end of the show, and then Tony and I are gonna kind of do a top 10 mock draft here of what we think this top 10 might look like, which, by the way, Tony, I had some trouble with. I was going through this for like 2 hours trying to match players with teams because we weren't doing any trades here, but we'll see what both of us came up with. We did it separately, and we'll compare and contrast what our groups look like.
Should be fun.
It should be. All right, Tony, you were pumped up about the Arizona Baylor game over the weekend. What'd you think once you watched it?
And it was a good game for 3 quarters. And it was actually one of those games where every player that I mentioned, I was looking forward to seeing played well. I mean, first of all, you start with Arizona, who won the game. Genesis Smith, their safety, who I'm heard very likely is a good chance he's going to enter the draft, had a forced fumble, had a fumble recovery. He's athletic. He sells out. He's instinctive. He does a great job reading and diagnosing plays. And I was texting a scout friend during the game, and they said to me, they said, this kid's for real. And you got to keep an eye on him because, Arizona's had a pretty good year this season. No one really talks about Genesis Smith and what looks like it's going to be a very, as usual, average safety class, except for the guy at the top. Treydon Stukes is another cornerback. You're talking mid-day 3, decent size, physical, really better facing the action. But another defensive back from the Arizona Wildcats who reads the plays very well, has a nice break to the ball. He made a really important interception in the third quarter as Baylor was going in to bring the score closer. That kind of blew the game open for Arizona. So another guy to keep an eye on. Sawyer Robertson, the quarterback from Baylor, day 3 guy. He's patient. He's deliberate. He's disciplined. Made one bad pass, but he's accurate. He doesn't wow you. He's just very efficient. A day 3 guy that could be a number 2 QB. John Cameron, if you're looking for a bigger possession wideout, 6'1", 219 pounds. He played well, tracks the ball in the air, caught everything that was thrown to him. And Michael Trigg is going to be one of the more interesting players as we get closer to the draft. Sort of a tight end, H-back type guy. He's big. He's athletic. He moves around the field well. He does have drops. He's had drops in the past. He caught everything on Saturday. Gets a little mouthy at times. You see him very chatty. You'd rather have him focus on the football game. But he is a playmaker at that tight end position. He's got decent size, 6'3.5", 252 pounds. Plays in the 4.6s. He's a guy that's going to get there's going to be a lot of opinion on Michael Trigg. When he's good, he's very good. But he'll break your heart at times with some, out of the ordinary drops, passes that go slipping through his hands.
And Tony, he also has some background too. This is his third school. He left his previous school in circumstances that I know some people have some questions about. So something that we'll keep an eye on with him as you go through the draft process. Ohio State's been dealing with some injuries at wide
Yeah.
receiver. Cardinal Tate's been hurt. Jeremiah Smith is playing through something. They're very vague with injuries, so we don't know exactly what's going on there. But he gave their tight end Max Clare a chance to show out last week.
And he was terrific against Rutgers. 7 receptions, 105 yards, 1 TD. It's funny because we talked about Max Clare, and we said on the show, with Jeremiah Smith and Cardinal Tate, you're only going to get so many opportunities. And on the broadcast, they were talking about him being a nice safety valve in that Ohio State passing game. He was the main guy because he had to be. And you understand why scouts had him graded as a day 2 pick coming into the season, because he moves incredibly well. He's fluid in every direction on the field. He catches the ball like a wide receiver. Blocking is not his forte. He's more of a second level type of blocker that needs a running start. But you see the abilities there, and the football skills are there. And transfers to Ohio State from Purdue, understandable, because Purdue has been a losing program. He's only going to get see the ball so many times. He really cashed in on the opportunity Saturday. Let's see what happens this past Saturday against Rutgers. Let's see what happens this coming Saturday against Michigan, depending on the health of those two receivers.
No question about it. And then, Tony, you like the matchup between Quincy Rhodes Jr., the edge rusher for Arkansas, going against Trevor Goosby, Texas offensive tackle.
Yeah, I mean, Goosby got the best of Rhodes when they went head-to-head, and you can see the upside in both players, but both guys really, in my opinion, need to go back to school. And I was texting with somebody familiar with the Texas program. They say Goosby, the left tackle for the Texas Longhorns, it's 50-50 as to whether or not he's going to come out. He's athletic, but he does a lot of bending at the waist. He overextends in the blocks, which will get him killed on the next level. Rhodes is very athletic. He shows good movement skills. He can rush the passer, but he's got to get stronger, and he's got to develop more moves to get off blocks, because once he gets locked up in a block, it's game over. I like the upside of both of those guys. I like them as prospects, but they need a lot of work on their game.
All right, Tony, let's get to our mock draft here. But first, a reminder that draft season is presented by Moody's, a proud sponsor of the New York Football Giants. And of course, Moody's unites the brightest minds to turn today's risk into tomorrow's opportunities. Learn more at Moody's.com. All right, so we're going to do a little mock draft here. Then we have some questions as well from the fans out there. They have some good draft questions. We'll get to that. So, Tony, first overall here, and I'm going to say this for the first 2 picks. This is our draft order that me and Tony are working off of. It's Titans, Giants, Saints, Jets, Raiders, Browns, Commanders, Bengals, Cardinals, Dolphins. Those are our top 10 here. This order is going to change. So this is more figuring out what players, the strength of the class, who's there, what team needs are. Very early in the process, obviously, with free agency still on the horizon. We don't know what the coaches are going to be for some of these teams. We don't know what the needs are going to be exactly. But just to give you an idea of what the conversation might be with these teams. And I'll start here. Right now, the Titans and the Giants have the first 2 picks. The reason the Giants have the second overall pick is because they have not had their bye yet. That's going to happen next week once they have their bye, and I think they'll probably win a couple of their last 4 games the way they're playing. I think they're going to drop in the order. But as it is now, Titans and Giants are the first 2 teams, and both these teams, and we're not doing trades here, will be on the phone looking to trade back for a team looking for a quarterback.
You would think so. I mean, I remember when the Bears had the first pick of the draft and people were talking about a team moving up to get Bryce Young. I said, I didn't think anybody was going to move up to trade up and get Bryce Young. Lo and behold, here come the Carolina Panthers. They give away a ton of picks. It hasn't worked out for them to date. No. You would expect any team that's at the top looking to trade down. I know that's one of the questions we have later on, which we'll get to. It's just common sense, unless there is a Peyton Manning or Trevor Lawrence, although he hasn't panned out as the way we thought, unless there is that generational type of talent at the top of the draft, you're always going to, that lock, the player you perceive to be a lock, you're always going to look to trade down, and there's no player like that in this year's draft. And just before we start, I didn't force quarterbacks into my top 10. I didn't say, well, this team needs a quarterback.
I did.
I'm going to put my 20th ranked player there. I tried to stay true to my board rather than go with team needs, and we'll talk about that as we go on.
I was more predictive, so we'll see how this goes then. This will be interesting. All right, let's start with the Tennessee Titans here, Tony. And look, I think they would love with this pick to try to build around Cam Ward on the offensive side of the ball with an offensive lineman or with a wide receiver. Here's the problem. Nobody's good enough to be selected first overall at those positions. The good news and also the bad news for the Titans is that their defense is also not very good. So
Yep.
they need players all over the place. So I went with the guy who I think is the best player in this draft, and I gave them Arvell Reese, the linebacker slash edge player out of Ohio State. You can play him on the edge. You can play him a linebacker. The Titans need help at both spots. So I went Arvell Reese, number 1 overall to the Titans.
I agree with you completely. I'd love to get a big left tackle there. There's no one there. There's no left tackles really in the first round. The receivers, there's going to be a lot of opinion about the receivers. None of these guys pan out great out as top 10 picks for me. I stayed defense, but I went with Reuben Bain. The reason I went with Reuben Bain is, amongst other positions, the Titans have been in need of an edge rusher, of somebody who can get to the passer for the longest time now. I know they play a 3-4. I know they drafted Iafemi from UCLA, although he's on injured reserve now in the second round. Like you said, a lot depends on who the coach is and the defensive scheme that they employ. I have my concerns about Reuben Bain. Kind of wears down. He's got to be quicker getting off blocks. The production isn't there, but he's getting better on the football field. He's got growth potential, and he fits the need, and he's one of the best players in this year's draft.
All right, Tony, let's go to number 2. I'll let you lead off here with the New York Football Giants. Who do you have them selecting in your mock?
Well, again, I'd love to put a game-changing receiver here, but there's none on the board. I'd love to have a big-time cornerback here, but there's no cornerback is really worth a top 8 pick. I wouldn't even mind having a big right tackle. Although the Giants' offensive line has played well, still, you can improve the offensive line. Maybe you push the tackle into guard. Came down to 2 players for me. One of them was Jeremiah Love, because I thought, you know what? You want to make Jackson Dart better, and Jackson Dart has shown some incredible ability. You get a playmaker like Jeremiah Love. If teams put 7, 8 guys in the box, they'll get beat by Jackson Dart. If they play a regular defense, Jeremiah Love will beat them. But when you look at the Giants, the problem with the Giants has been defense, especially stopping the run. So I had them taking Arvell Reese, who you have the Titans taking with the first selection, because I think Arvell Reese indirectly will help Dexter Lawrence, will help the run defense. He's a 3-down linebacker. You can put him on the field on 3rd and short to stop the run, keep him on the field in 3rd and 5 to rush the passer or cover the pass, and he's just hitting his stride. He's just going to get better and better and better. I have the Giants taking Arvell Reese.
And I assume with the Giants, then you have him as an off-ball linebacker, right? Because with Abdul Carter, Brian Burns, and Kayvon Thibodeau, and this is gonna, I might as well go with the question here. Frank Buffone, one part of his question later on is, do you see him as an edge or a linebacker prospect? And clearly, if you're going to the Giants here, you see him as an off-ball linebacker.
I see him as an off-ball linebacker who will be effective on the blitz when you ask him to blitz. I hate when they take these guys and they kind of pigeonhole him or they corner him into, well, he's an edge rusher. Is he an off-ball linebacker? Arvell Reese, in my opinion, can do it all. I think he's better as an off-ball linebacker, but I think he's also a guy that you can use in certain situations, maybe a zone blitz and drop Abdul Carter back off the line or Kayvon Thibodeau, and he's going to do that sort of job for you. Regardless, I absolutely think, 3rd and 5, he can cover space, he can cover the tight end, he can cover the running back out of the backfield.
All right, Tony, this was tough because, like you said, I'm trying to get the Giants a wide receiver here with their first-round pick. And I think eventually the Giants will be picking lower than this, and I think they will have a chance to get one. The wide receiver I'm looking to get, because I think he complements Malik Neighbors well as Carnell Tate, as a taller guy that can get vertical. And he's 6'3". He's a good route runner. Ohio State's pedigree. I think it's a safe pick. That's the wide receiver I would try to get for the Giants. I haven't finished all my work on the wide receivers yet, but that's where I stand right now. But I can't pick him second overall. He's just not good enough to be picked second overall. So for me, Arvell Reese is gone. So I thought about Reuben Bain, who you went first overall to Tennessee. But the Giants have 3 edge rushers already, and I don't think Bain is quite big enough to be a full-time defensive tackle. So I'm like, all right, where do I go now? To your point, I couldn't find a cornerback. As much as Mansour Delane has played great this year, I can't pick this guy second overall. I just can't do it. So I'm going with a guy who's a big upside pick, and even though he's listed as an edge, I think as he ages, gets older and bigger, he's going to be a three technique defensive tackle in the National Football League. I'm going Keldrick Falk here out of Auburn. He's
Okay.
already a good run stopper. He has to work on his pass rush. You have Dexter Lawrence as your nose tackle. The Giants' run defense has been awful again this year. You get him in there at the three technique. You put him next to Dex and those two dynamic edge rushers with Abdul Carter, Brian Burns, Kayvon Thibodeau, whoever's on the field. And I think you got a really good defensive front there. Again, maybe not the biggest position in need, but the Giants certainly have needed help on that defensive front to stop the run, and I think Keldrick Falk will do that. Remember, just 20 years old. He's 6'6", 285. He can grow into that role, so I'm going Keldrick Falk.
Did you give Jeremiah Love any consideration at this pick?
I can't do it. Cam Scadaboo was so good. I know he's hurt, but when he played, he was so good. The Giants have run the ball well with Tyrone Tracy. And frankly, Tony, I'm not relitigating a Saquon Barkley top 5 running back pick to the Giants. I've lived that life. I don't want to live that life again. So no, I didn't.
So you're confident that Scadaboo will come back 100% because that was the next season. That was an ugly injury.
Yeah. Look, I don't know. I'm not a doctor. I have no idea. I hope that he does. I can't justify where the Giants are selecting a running back in the top 5. I just can't do it.
Got it.
All right.
All right.
I'll go pick number 3 to the Saints. And Ruben Baines left on the board, Tony. How can I not pick him? I think Tyler Shook's been pretty good for them. I thought about a quarterback here, but the Saints have not forced that position, and this is not an overwhelming class. So I went with Ruben Bain here. You know, Benson likes picking guys up front on the defensive line. Their pass rush is not what it used to be. They need a pass rusher. Ruben Bain's still there. This was one of the easier ones for me. If Bain was still on the board, I gave him to the Saints.
Offensive line, defensive linemen, defensive ends, and offensive tackles. I mean, that's the MO for the Saints, right? You said something. Tyler Shough has been pretty good for them. And we'll have to see how Tyler Shough finishes out the season. But with the third pick, I gave them Fernando Mendoza, thinking that Mendoza is going to be an upgrade over Tyler Shough, who played well, was great last season at Louisville, had an up and down senior career. With Mendoza, he was good at Cal. He's been much better this year at Indiana. I love the upside trajectory, which is something I put a priority on at the quarterback position. But again, if Tyler Shough, who has not been bad, really finishes out the season with a flurry, then the Saints don't have to take a quarterback with that first pick. But as of right now, I have them taking Mendoza.
All right, Tony, you're up first then with your Jets at number 4.
You know, when the Jets traded Ahmad Gardner and Quentin Williams right before the deadline, I thought it was kind of ridiculous, to tell you the truth. I mean, they gave away 2 cornerstone players on defense, 2 guys that play critical positions in their prime, guys that were locked up in their contract. They weren't imminent free agents, although there was talk that Williams wanted a better deal. You know, what player doesn't want a better deal in the NFL? And they got back a lot of draft picks and 2 underachieving players. So they got back a lot of unknown. Everybody said, well, you know, they did this because they need the quarterback. And I said, well, yeah, they need the quarterback, but now they also need a cornerback and a defensive tackle because they traded away 2 outstanding players. I'm not going to force a quarterback here. I can't take Ty Simpson. You know, he started 9 games in college. I can't do it because I understand that it's easier to miss on an early pick this year with the hard cap, with the rookie hard cap salary cap, and with the fact that quarterbacks these days are traded and cut like never before, and you get a reclamation project. But you still, if you have a top 10 pick, you want to hit on that pick. You want to get a good player. The Jets secondary is an absolute mess. I mean, it was a mess before they traded Ahmad Gardner. Really, since week 1, the receivers are open all over the field. I don't know if it's a schematic thing. I don't know what it is. The head coach is a former Pro Bowl cornerback. With the 4th pick of the draft, I'm taking Caleb Downs. The Jets safety spot has been a sore spot for a long time. Downs he doesn't have the great stats this year, but he's being asked to do different things, and he's doing them very well. And we've seen in the past, the guy is a playmaker. He was a playmaker at Alabama. He was phenomenal last year at Ohio State. He's doing a good job at Ohio State. Is asking him to do this year. He's more than just a downhill safety. He's got great range. He's got terrific ball skills. I look at Aaron Glenn, the defensive back. I look at Caleb Downs. I look at the need of the Jets secondary. And Caleb Downs is head and shoulders a better prospect than any quarterback that's available on the board. Maybe the Jets get a quarterback with their 2nd first-round pick. Maybe they move up and get a quarterback. I can't take Ty Simpson or the Oregon quarterback over Caleb Downs here. I'm taking Caleb Downs for the Jets.
Yeah, look, I think he's the best non-quarterback left, and I could argue he should have been picked earlier than this already, to be honest with you, just based on quality of player. So no argument from there, Tony. But for me, Fernando Mendoza was still on the board, so I gave him to the Jets. Now, the Jets might choose to be patient here. Clearly, they're taking a long-term building outlook with the way they've traded. To your point, those players, they're stacked pick not just in this year's draft, but next year's draft as well. Do they like next year's quarterback class better? That's a risky proposition. You never know what the quarterback class is going to look like at this time of year. So you have a chance to get Mendoza. I gave the Jets Mendoza at number 4 because, frankly, they need a quarterback and they just can't go through another year like this with just nothing at that spot. Then you got to the Raiders at number 5, Tony. And this is one of the ones I went back and forth on a few different times. And again, they need an offensive lineman. They need a wide receiver. Couldn't find one that I thought was good enough to give him to him at number 5. I just couldn't do it. I know a lot of people with Jordan Tyson this high, Tony. The guy can't stay healthy. I can't pull the trigger on a 5th overall pick as much as I like the player on Tyson. So offensive line, same deal. You know, Spencer Fano, Maui Noah. I can't get myself sold on one of those guys at 5th overall. And then I got thinking, well, who is Mark Davis's number 1 advisor that he likes to listen to? Tom Brady. And I think when you watch Ty Simpson play quarterback, that's a quarterback that Tom Brady is going to say, I think this guy can be a really good NFL player. And while Geno Smith is still good, he's old. He's in his 30s. He only has a couple years left. It was a short-term deal that they extended him to. So I'm going to go Ty Simpson here to the Raiders. And I think if they do this trade, they can then trade Geno Smith to maybe a team that's a little bit quarterback desperate that doesn't get their quarterback and they want to kind of take a quick jump. I'm looking at you, Minnesota Vikings, who maybe decide J.J. McCarthy's not your guy. And they use that pick then on a wide receiver and offensive lineman. So I think Tom Brady falls in love with Ty Simpson, who comes out, and that's who the Raiders select to pick number 5.
Definitely need a quarterback. I agree with you 100% on the needed offensive line, but they also have needs at defensive line. And I know in your mock draft, Keldrick Falk right now is wearing giant blue, but he's available to the Raiders. They need a guy that can rush the edge. They play a 4-man line. They need help on that defensive line. It's been a disaster. It hasn't been good, and it started with Christian Wilkins earlier this offseason. So I'm going to go with Keldrick Falk. I think it checks a lot of boxes. They need a guy who can rush the passer. He can do that. You mentioned his size and the ability to add growth to his frame and become a better run defender. That helps. And, the Raiders in the past have gotten won with big, mean defensive linemen, big, productive, athletic defensive linemen. This is kind of a throwback pick. He's the top-rated player on my board. It fits in need. I think it's a good pick for the Raiders.
And the reason I had trouble with the Raiders, Tony, is because they do have needs everywhere. Defense, offensive line, wide receiver. You can go any direction here. But again, I since Falk was gone from me, I couldn't find that guy. And I thought about, I had Caleb Downs in the slot a few different times, but I eventually decided to slide him down a little bit. All right, you're up with the Browns, 6th overall.
Browns have done a good job on defense, and they've done almost an equally terrible job on offense, specifically on the offensive line, quarterback, and they need some receivers. They've done a good job at running back. A couple of years ago, we looked at the Browns' offensive line, and we thought that it was going to be a strength. They had some good players up there. The kid from Alabama they drafted, Willis, has really never panned out. Jack Conklin's in and out of the lineup with injury. You look at their offensive line now. Cam Robinson, the left tackle, is going to be a free agent after this season. The Browns have an out on Jack Conklin. So they have a really good defense. With the signings in the offseason, Carson Schwarzenegger, I think, is going to be Defensive Rookie of the Year, as he well deserves. You got to focus on offense. And people will say quarterback. I'm going to go with the offensive line. My first offensive tackle comes off the board. I'm going to go with Spencer Fano, who I project as a right tackle. I know people like him at guard, but I think he's going to be a right tackle in the NFL. Got to do something to help that offensive line. It's going to help whatever quarterback you have playing back there. It's also going to help Quinshawn Junkins, who's played well when he's on the field.
I went quarterback, Tony. I think the Brown quarterback carousel continues. I gave them Dante Moore from Oregon, the quarterback, if he comes out. Again, we don't know if Simpson and Moore are going to come out this year. But look, the Browns need somebody at the position. They've stockpiled picks as well. So we'll see what they end up doing with this. look, if Moore doesn't work out, then you pull the trigger again the following year. You just got to keep picking quarterbacks until you find the right one. You're picking fifth here. Again, if you're sitting there and there's another, quote unquote, I'm not going to use the term generational. If you see like a really true blue chip prospect that's sitting there in another position, sure, I wouldn't pick Dante Moore here. Here's the problem. I don't think that guy exists. So I think at this point, given your other options, I think it's worth rolling the dice in the quarterback. So I went Dante Moore here.
Interesting to see what they do in the offseason. I mean, Deshaun Watson still on that roster. See what they do at the coaching position. I mean, wouldn't it be ironic if they somehow bring Bill O'Brien into the front office, who had incredible success with Watson at quarterback?
And we'll see what the rest of the year looks like for Shedeur Sanders and Dylan Gabriel as well. Maybe that might change their minds too. We'll have to see how that goes. All right, Commanders at 7, Tony. I thought about Jeremiah Love here. I'm not going to lie, but I think they liked Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt enough that they weren't going to pull the trigger there. The Commanders' defense is no good. It's very bad, especially in the back half. Caleb Downs is still sitting there for me. I had to give him Caleb Downs here. I really wanted to get him to the Bengals at 8 because the Bengals just need a defensive player so badly. I really wanted to get Caleb Downs to the Bengals, especially with how their safeties have played this year. I couldn't get him past the Commanders here. So Caleb Downs to the Commanders. He's a guy that can really transform how you work your defense. Think of where Dan Quinn came from with the Legion of Boom, with Earl Thomas, Cam Chancellor. He can use him in that type of way as a weapon on that defense to just make that Commander defense a lot better than it is. So I did Caleb Downs to the Commanders here. And this, again, it was just a matter of how high he went. I kept moving him to different teams because he's such a good player. But Caleb Downs, number 7 to the Commanders for me. How about you?
Yeah, well, Downs is off the board, so I'm giving him Jeremiah Love. Yeah, they like Krosky-Merritt, but I don't know that he's an every down back, a feature back. I think with Jeremiah Love, you add another piece for Jaden Daniels and go back to what I said about the Giants and then multiply it by 2 with the Commanders. I mean, if you try and stack the box, you're going to get beat by Jaden Daniels. If you lay back, to protect against Daniels, then Jeremiah Love is going to beat you. And they've got a decent offensive line. I think this could be the final piece for their offense. I understand what you're saying about their defense, but they also have a defensive-minded coordinator who I think is able to, make a mountain out of a molehill, and he'll get the most out of the players on that side of the ball. Spit it out, Tony. That side of the ball. I just think with Jeremiah Love, you help the offense and you make Jaden Daniels that much more effective.
Yeah, I really thought about Love here, Tony. I just couldn't quite get there. All right, let's go to you first. Bengals at 8.
Bengals need help a lot of areas, especially on defense. Peter Woods is sitting there. I gave Peter Woods consideration with the Jets pick, but I had got Caleb Downs rated much higher. They need a lot of help on the interior of that defensive line. They took Stewart from Texas A&M with the first pick as their edge rusher of the future. Trey Hendrickson, the other edge rusher, is probably on his way out. Granted, Peter Woods plays on the inside, which is where they need a lot of help. Woods is a guy that's got great upside. Production hasn't been there this year, but as we've talked about on the show numerous times, it's been a terrible season at Clemson. I like his upside. I like his ability. He's just got to take the game to the next level. Again, I think it's a good player, one of the best players on the board that fits a need in Cincinnati. So I have the Bengals taking Peter Woods.
I thought about Peter Woods here, but I think that Trey Hendrickson saga is going to have to resolve itself in one way, shape, or form this offseason. I'd be surprised if he's on the Bengals again next year, just considering how ugly it was last offseason, and now there's even less time left on his contract. They can franchise him. So I just don't think he's going to be there. And my next favorite defensive player, and this is me predicting that this player is going to absolutely blow up the combine and become the kind of soup du jour and player du jour for all the draft people out there. I gave him David Bailey, the pass rusher out of Texas Tech. The Bengals are going to need a pass rusher if Trey Hendrickson is not there. I know he's a little undersized, but he's got a lot of juice. So, and the production's going to be there, Tony. He might finish with, 12, 13, 14, 15 sacks this year. So I'm going with David Bailey, edge rusher out of Texas Tech. I know he's not this highly rated by most people, but I think once we get to the draft, I think he will be.
No concern that they go edge rusher back-to-back years?
Him and Bailey and Shamar Stewart are very different types of edge rushers. Stewart's a lot bigger, so I think they can complement each other on either side of the line.
All right.
All right,
Number
I'm up
9.
now. Yeah, I'm up now, number 9 for the Cardinals. A guy that you already selected, the Cardinals. Tony, I really wanted to give him a wide receiver again, but I didn't think. Again, I can't get on Jordan Tyson as a top 10 pick. And I don't think Cardinal take compliments Marvin Harrison Jr. well. I think they're very similar, the size and stuff like that. So I didn't want to go there. I thought about a defensive tackle. I thought about Peter Woods here, but I decided to go Spencer Fano, the offensive tackle. They need help on the right side. They have Paris Campbell, left tackle. The right tackle is a bit of a mess. I think Kelvin Beacham's their starter there right now. So he's a veteran. You got to move on from him eventually. So I went Spencer Fano here for the Cardinals, who need to get that offensive line a little bit better for whatever their quarterback situation looks like next year.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And Fano's off my board. I had the Browns taking him at 6, so I have the Cardinals taking Francis Muega, the offensive right tackle for Miami.
Maui Noah, I think, Tony, is how it's pronounced. Maui Noah.
Mariola. Okay, right.
Okay.
I should know that. His brother plays for the Jets. But anyway, I mean, he's a lot of people project him the guard, but I think he's an athletic right tackle in the Lane Johnson sort of mold. He's fluid on the second level. He moves well. He's strong. He's got a lot of upside. And like you say, I mean, they started Paris Johnson, the first round pick, at the right side a couple years ago. They moved him to the left side. They need a lot of help on the right side. Kelvin Beacham, I mean, he's an undersized left tackle. It's trying to play on the strong side. I think Maegoa really helps that situation a lot.
All right, let's go to the Dolphins at 10, Tony. You're up.
This is really my only reach. I would have liked to put an offensive tackle there, but both offensive tackles are off the board. They need help on the defensive line. This is the one pick that I kind of went off my board on, kind of reached on, and I gave them Mansour Delane, the cornerback at LSU. I like Delane a lot, but I like him more in the middle part of the first round rather than the top 10. He's a big physical corner that can play backed off the line. He can play in man coverage. He's having a terrific season, kind of reminiscent or fulfilling the promise that he showed 2 years ago at Virginia Tech. We'll see how he runs at the combine. He may not be 40 fast, but he is football fast, and he's got excellent ball skills.
I went Francis Maui Noah here. He was still on the line, the board for me, Tony. The Dolphins' offensive line has been a problem for years. Whether he's a tackle or a guard, it shouldn't matter for Miami. They need an offensive tackle. I went there. Thought about a wide receiver here with Tyreek Hill's injury. They want to put someone across from Jalen Waddle. Decided Maui Noah was the better pick. And I guess my one disappointment, quick, Tony, that I couldn't get into the top 10 was Jeremiah Love. I just couldn't find a landing spot for him. Like I said, the Commanders ended up going downs in my version. At some point, I had the Raiders taking downs, and then only 2 quarterbacks going in the top 10, and then I had Love going to the Commanders, and I kind of went off of that. So that was the only thing I couldn't find. I think Love will be a top 10 pick in this draft. I just couldn't get him onto a team here in my version. Any regrets when you look at yours?
I mean, no, because it basically matched up with my to my board, except for the 10th pick of the draft, and I filled that pick, the Dolphins, with a critical need at cornerback. Now, that's what happens when you force the quarterbacks into the top 10. You get good players who start falling out of the top 10. And those teams that end up selecting 11, 12, 13, 14, are in the driver's seat because they can either get the Jeremiah Love or they can make a big trade for a team that wants to move up to get a Jeremiah Love. Yeah. And, I understand your scenario because as we've seen in the past 25 years, quarterbacks are always overdrafted, and it's probably going to happen in 2026. I just can't put players that haven't even played a full season on the college level in my top 10. I'm sorry.
I totally get it, Tony. All right, let's roll through these questions. Reminder, Draft Season is presented by Moody's, a proud partner of the New York Giants. Decode risk, unlock opportunity. Learn more at Moody's.com. All right, Tony, our first question. These are all from Twitter. Thank you to the folks that submitted. Rob Staten, what have you made of Caden McDonald, defensive tackle, Ohio State, his performances, and you hearing anything about the likelihood of him returning pro after the year?
You always have to figure that it's more than 50-50 that a top-rated Ohio State Buckeye underclassman is going to enter the draft. That's been the history, especially a guy that's already won a national championship and is on the number 1 team in the nation right now. Now, when we talk about Ohio State, everybody talks about wide receivers coming out of Ohio State, whether it be Marvin Harrison, Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, Jeremiah Smith, Emeka Ibuka. But if you look at the program's history, they've also had some sensational defensive linemen on a consistent basis. You go back to Dan Wilkinson, a guy by the name of Vernon Gholston. Some of those guys didn't pan out. The Bosa brothers. And with McDonald, remember, there were two guys on the interior of that Ohio State defensive line, Tyleik Williams, who was drafted in the first round by the Lions, and Ty Hamilton, who was drafted in the fifth round by the Rams, which meant that McDonald wasn't getting playing time. But Ohio State has always had strong defensive linemen that play in the NFL. So am I surprised by his pure dominance? Yes, based off of the fact that he really didn't play too much in 2024, but they didn't need him to play. He's been a terrific player. I mean, I think he's playing probably at a higher level than Tyleik Williams, which which is something that will have to enter into the equation as far as him entering the draft.
Absolutely right. All right, question number 2, Aiden Fink. Tony, what are your thoughts on trading down in this year's draft so a team in need of a quarterback can move up? And do you think specifically the Giants would consider going that route? I'll answer that question first. Yes, absolutely. If Jackson Dart continues to play well and they decide they don't need a quarterback and they're picking that high, and again, I'm not sure they will be picking that high, but if they are, I think this is a draft, Tony, where every day that ends in a Y, you're going to try to trade down in this year's draft.
Yeah, like we said at the top, unless there is a generational type talent or that impact type of player at the top of the draft, you're going to be working the phones. I mean, last year, you had the quarterback at the top with Cam Ward. Then you had two outstanding players in Abdul Carter and Travis Hunter. You had some good players after that, Mason Graham, Armand Membo. So there really wasn't, you were going to have to pay a premium to get up and get one of those selections. The cost this year may not be as much, but who is the team going to trade up for? You have to factor that in. And what would they be willing to give away to move up and get a player?
No question about it. All right, statement number 3, and again, a team has to be wanting to move up to get that guy. Having the partner is really the trick. Justin wants to know, what year, in your opinion, Tony, the worst NFL draft class of this century, both in lack of blue chips and depth, and will the 2026 class blow that one out of the water with its ineptitude?
Well, I mean, that remains to be seen. And I didn't go back the entire century. I went back to 2013. And you look at the 2013 draft. First pick was Eric Fisher. Second pick was Luke Jokel.
That was my pick, too.
Third pick was Deion Jordan. Lane Johnson, the fourth pick, really good. But you go on and on. It was bust after bust. You had Sheldon Richardson, who was a solid player there coming out of that draft. Eric Reed, who's had a long career. I don't know that it's been a distinguished career. But I mean, the 2013 draft, compared to what people thought it was going to be like on paper, I mean, it was a complete dud.
And I think people knew that at the top of that draft that those picks weren't your normal blue chippers at the time. But yeah, it certainly did not hit. John Latini, thinking the Giants need a good linebacker in the middle rounds. Tony, any sleepers that Giant fans can try to look for in terms of an inside off-ball linebacker in the middle rounds of the draft?
I like David Woodgate, who's going to be an early day 3 pick if he enters the draft. He's a junior out of Maryland, although I hear the Terrapins are working hard to keep him, which may be easier now since they've already announced that their coach is coming back. Jayshawn Barwin out of Michigan, sort of like a miniature Avril Reese, an off-ball linebacker who can also rush the passer. Lander Barton of Utah has kind of fallen off a bit. 2 years ago, he was graded as a day 2 pick. He's now a day 3 selection, but he's shown that ability in the past to play in space. A guy that we've mentioned here a couple times. We talked about him at length when Mike Brenner was on. Caleb Ellams-Orr from TCU, a smaller guy, 6'1", 230 pounds, but a great pursuit sideline to sideline linebacker that can cover the pass. He can get to the sidelines and shut the corners off from the running backs. As we talked about, this is going to be a terrific year for off-ball linebackers. So if the Giants don't get a crack at an Arvell Reese early in the draft, or they even pass on him, there'll be guys there in the second, I know they don't have a third round, second round and early day 3 that I believe can play early in their rookie seasons.
So, Tony, then I'll just follow up with the second part of Frank Buffone's question from before. You think this is probably, and I think it is, one of the best off-ball linebacker classes we've seen in a long time?
I love the off-ball linebacker class. I think the problem with linebackers these days is everybody automatically judges them on can they rush the passer? Are they edge rushers? And it's not. We've seen this in the results of the draft. You know, that 4-3 weak side linebacker has been devalued. You know, because a lot of times they stick them on the inside of a 3-4 and they let them run to the ball. But with these guys, not only are they great pursuing the run, but they can also cover.
All right, let's go to our final two questions. These ones come from upstairs. Big Ohio State fan, Dan Salomon, one of our writers, Tony. Have you ever seen a college have 3 top 10 potential draft picks, but while their 2 best players on their roster still are not draft eligible? And I think he's referring to Julian Sayin and Jeremiah Smith with those 2 players, by the way.
Yeah, I also think he thinks Sonny Styles is going to be a top 10 pick. I'm not of that same mind, and I like Styles. I just don't think he's a top 10 pick. And we are a Ohio State family because my daughter graduated from Ohio State in May. So, and she'll be down the city this Saturday at Ohio State bar watching the game. You know what? In what was it, 2005, 2006, Auburn actually had 3 picks, 3 players selected in the top 9. Ronnie Brown with the 2nd pick of the draft to the Dolphins, Cadillac Williams with the 5th pick of the draft to the Buccaneers, and Carlos Rogers with the 9th pick of the draft to the then Washington Redskins. So that has happened before, but then the next year their first player taken was a 2nd rounder. So no, there's not been the depth of talent. I think in some cases, obviously, the transfer portal and NIL has helped this. But Ohio State always regularly has guys, not only in the top 10, not in the first round, but in the top 15. And when you win the national championships, it's easier to attract those types of players.
All right, then we got Matthew Sytak, who is a Vanderbilt alumni, wants to know just how high of a ceiling does Eli Stowers have? He doesn't have the biggest frame, but he is the modern big slot tight end. Who in the NFL does he remind you of, Tony?
Okay, you're going to have to help me out with a name here. As far as his ability, the kid that played for the New Orleans Saints all those years ago.
Jimmy Graham?
There you go. That's exactly. I mean, a guy who can get downfield, make the big reception. He's tough to cover because even though he doesn't have the biggest frame, he's still going to outsize the defensive backs and the safeties in the secondary. He's still fast enough to outrun linebackers. He is your traditional move tight end. I think what happens is in that Vanderbilt offense with the Diego Pava and everything else, he kind of gets lost in it. If he was on an offense that, wasn't so dynamic and wasn't so diverse, his production may be even better than what it is now. And it's pretty good now with 57 receptions, 705 catches. Listen, Eli Stowers has been a good player since he was a sophomore at New Mexico State. And the fact is Vanderbilt made the right choice by giving him a large NIL deal to come back, and we're seeing the fruition not only in his production, but the Vanderbilt offense and the Vanderbilt record. I think Stowers maybe a late day 2 pick, depending on how he works out, no later than the 4th round, but in the right system, he's going to be a real good NFL tight end.
All right, Tony, let's wrap here. We got 3 quick matchups this weekend you want to touch on. We talked about the Arizona secondary to open the show. They get Jordan Tyson in Arizona State this week. That should be fun.
But that's going to be. And Tyson had a return last week. I think he had 2 receptions for 60 yards or something. So he's on the mend. That's going to be a big challenge, a big opportunity for Genesis Smith, the safety from Arizona, and Treydon Dukes. See how that works out for him.
All right, other matchup, Ruben Bain against Pittsburgh offensive tackle Ryan Baer, 6'7", 325. I think we've talked about him briefly on a previous show, but this is a big test for him. And by the way, I want to see Ruben Bain start getting a little bit more production, Tony. He only has 3 sacks. And look, he's been great this year. Ruben Bain's going to be a good player, but I'd like to see the production start to kick up a little bit here, Ruben. Let's go. Come on.
Coming into the season, a lot of people, including myself, thought that Baer could be a first-round pick. He's been up and down. He is a bigger athletic right tackle. The thing to watch here is when they're pitted up once against each other, once Baer gets his hands on Ruben Bain, is Bain able to get off blocks? Is he able to defeat the blocks? Or is it a situation where when Ryan Baer, the right tackle from Pittsburgh, gets his hands on Bain, game over? It'll be interesting to watch. Remember, this is a big game because Pittsburgh beat Georgia Tech last week. Miami's in the driver's seat. So this is a big game for both teams as far as who's going to play in the ACC title game.
Yeah, Miami right on the fringe of the college football playoff, so they need to win every single game the rest of the way. Remember, there are some questions about what Ruben Bain's arm length is going to be when that gets measured at the combine. How he handles a long offensive tackle like Bear, I think, will be telling. Finally, another edge rusher offensive tackle matchup. This one in the Big Ten, Tony. Northwestern, Caleb Tiernan, who we've talked about a lot this year, against Gabe Jacas out of Illinois. Disappointing year for Illinois, but he's been very productive. 9 sacks, 3 forced fumbles.
Yeah, he's explosive. Tiernan plays left tackle at Northwestern. I think he's going to be a right tackle at the next level, maybe even guard. He doesn't show that great lateral agility. Jacas is quick. He's mobile. He can rush the edge. He quickly gets up the field. This is the type of matchup that Jacas can exploit if you watch the film. Or on the other hand, this is Tiernan has an opportunity to prove doubters like myself that he deserves to play left tackle on Sunday.
All right, and then Tony, that's all we got, man. It was fun. Have a happy Thanksgiving, my friend. We'll be back next week, still working on what our topic's going to be, trying to get a couple guests. We'll see how that goes, but we're going to have a lot of games to review and look forward to. We got rivalry weekend. We didn't even touch on Michigan-Ohio State, which is another game coming up this weekend that should be exciting. And then we have the conference championship games to look forward to. So a lot next week on draft season. Tony, enjoy your Thanksgiving, my friend.
Thanks, John. Same to you and your family, and all of our viewers, of course.
Absolutely. Everybody out there, happy Thanksgiving. You can find Draft Season on your favorite podcast platform. Please subscribe. It has its own feed. It's also on the Giants official podcast network feed, and you can find it on the Giants YouTube channel, Giants app, and everywhere you find your podcast. For Tony Pauline, I'm John Schmelk. We'll see you next time on Draft Season, everybody. Have a happy Thanksgiving.